So, how can you believe in one single, formless God, but at the same time also recognize the entire Hindu pantheon of gods? It sounds like a paradox, right? Well, today we're going to dive into a fascinating religious sect from 18th century India that did just that, the Satnamis of Oude. All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get into what true name actually means to them. Then we'll meet the founder, a pretty interesting guy from the warrior caste. After that, we'll unpack their really unique blend of beliefs, see what life was actually like for them day to day, and finally, figure out what their ultimate goal was, this idea of becoming a pure man. Okay, so first things first. To really get what the Satnamis were all about, we've got to start with their name. It holds the key to everything. Yeah, so the name itself is the foundation of their entire faith. Satnam literally translates to the true name. And for them, that meant one God, just one. The creator of everything without a beginning or an end, and, this is super important, completely formless. The term they used was nirgun, which basically means without qualities you can see or sense. And believe me, that one word is the key to understanding their whole worldview. So, an idea this big doesn't just pop up out of thin air, right? Every movement has a story, a founder. And for the Satnamis, that story begins with a man who was, interestingly enough, both a householder and a spiritual guide. Okay, so let's put a name and a time to this. We're talking about the mid-18th century, and the founder's name was Jagjivandas. Now, what's kind of cool is that he was a Ksatriya, from the warrior caste, but he didn't go off and become a hermit. Nope, he lived his whole life as a family man. And the spiritual center of this whole movement became a place called Kotwa, which is where you can still find his tomb today. And this guy wasn't just a talker. He was a writer, too. Jagjivandas actually wrote several really important texts in Hindi. These became the bedrock of the faith, laying out all the core beliefs and guiding his followers for years and years to come. All right, now we get to the really juicy part. This is where their belief system gets so interesting, because it's this incredible mashup of pure one-god monotheism and classic Hindu thought. And here it is, the central puzzle of the Satnamis. On the one hand, they were all about worshiping that one, formless God, right? But on the other hand, they didn't just throw out the entire Hindu pantheon, not at all. For them, gods like Rama and Krishna weren't separate deities. They were just different expressions, different manifestations of that one single ultimate God. So that begs the question, right? If God is formless, then what's all this? The world we see, feel, and touch? Well, to the Satnamis, it was Maya, an illusion. They pulled this idea from Vedanta philosophy, basically believing that our entire physical reality is just a kind of divine performance, a temporary show put on by the goddess Bhavani. Okay, so if you believe the world's just an illusion, how are you supposed to actually live your life? I mean, do you just check out? Not for them. They had a moral code that acted like a guide. It was all about being indifferent to life's ups and downs, being totally devoted to your spiritual teacher, and just living a good, gentle, truthful life, all while still doing your part in society. It's that classic idea, be in the world but not of it. Okay, so that's the philosophy. But what did it actually look like to be a Satnami? Let's talk about their community, their rules, and what made them stand out. Well, their community was basically divided into two groups. First, you had your everyday members, the householders. They lived pretty normal lives, even kept their traditional caste roles. But then you had the really dedicated folks, the mendicants, who were like monks. And here's the thing, they could come from any caste, and once they joined, everyone was treated as an equal. And get this, they didn't beg for food. The community supported them. And you would definitely know a Satnami mendicant if you saw one. I mean, they had a very specific look. They wore a red coat, a red skull cap, this unique kind of cloak, and a very distinct mark of ash that went straight up their forehead from their nose. And this number, well, this number is huge. It represents how many idols they worshipped. That's right, 0. The Satnamis were absolutely against idol worship. On top of that, they were also strict vegetarians and didn't drink alcohol. Okay, now we have to talk about something a bit more controversial, because no history is squeaky clean. The source material we have for this mentions a rumor, and it's really careful to say it's just a rumor, something they were said to practice. It alleges that some followers were involved in a so-called horrible rite known as the Gayatri Kriya. This was apparently a pretty extreme practice that supposedly involved the consumption of human secretions. It's a shocking detail that really clashes with the otherwise very disciplined and austere image they had.
So, after all that, the unique beliefs, the strict discipline, the whole social structure, what was the end game? What was the ultimate goal for someone on the Satnami path?
Well, their final destination wasn't some kind of heaven or paradise in the sky. It was something way more abstract, and maybe even more profound. The goal was to have your individual self, your you, completely dissolve, to be absorbed back into the Satnam, that one formless universal spirit they believed was the source of everything. And there's this really powerful quote from one of the founders' books that just sums it all up perfectly. The ideal, the pure man, is someone who lives right in the middle of everything, but is also totally separate from it all. He's engaged with life, but completely detached from the chaos, the good stuff, the bad stuff, all of it. And really, that leaves us with the big question that the Satnamis spent their lives trying to answer. How can you be fully present in the world and, at the same time, be completely detached from it? It's a huge challenge, and it's one that goes way beyond 18th century India. I mean, it's a question that spiritual seekers are still wrestling with today.